Hey, Algebra 2 Trig, welcome back. We are doing 3.2 today, and go ahead and write it down. Our essential question is, how do I graph polynomial functions of a higher degree? And I have some notes for you to take, so go ahead and look. So that's the first one. Okay. And then this is the second part of that. Okay. And then this is the third part of it. Okay. So I'll be addressing all those notes in the example. Okay, so the first example is we're going to graph f of x equals x cubed minus x squared minus 2x. Okay, so from your notes, it asks for what n was and what the coefficient of n is. So n is the highest degree, so this is n. And then the number in front, right now this is 1. Okay, this will be a sub n. Okay, so it's very important to understand where n is and where a sub n is. And then after that, we just start graphing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the zeros. Okay, after we find the zeros, we're going to graph the zeros. Okay, after we graph zeros, we're going to do the end behavior. And after end behavior, we'll graph the in-between points. All right, so the first thing is I'm going to find the zero, so I have to factor this all the way through. So f of x equals, and I'm not going to go too much into factoring, but this will factor into x times x minus 2 times x plus 1. Okay, so I know my zeros. My zeros are at 0, 2, and negative 1. So now I'm going to graph the zeros. Okay, so I'm going to graph 0, 2, and negative 1. So now I graph the zeros. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the end behavior. And on your notes and your end behavior, if n is odd and your coefficient of that is positive, then I know on the left side it's going to go down, and on the right side it's going to go up. Okay? So I know it's going to hit that point. I know it's going to hit that point. I can kind of guess what happens, but I should probably graph in between. So I should graph 1 when x is 1 to see where it goes. And I should also graph x is negative 0.5. So I'm going to just do some algebra. So the in-between points, so in between 0 and 2 is 1. So when x equals 1, and in between 0 and negative 1 is negative 1/2. Okay? All right, so when x is 1, I'm going to take 1. I'm going to plug it in here and get a value. So when I take 1 and I plug it in here, I should get negative 2. So when x is 1, f of 1 is negative 2. Okay? And then when x is negative 1/2, f of negative 1/2 is 0.625. Okay? I just plugged it in. So when x is 1, it's negative 2. So I'm going to go down 2. And when x is negative 1/2, it's going to be 0.625. So it's somewhere here. So now that I've graphed some in-between points, I should know how the graph goes. It should go up here, come straight down. It should go up here, come straight down, and there is my graph. Okay? All right, so let me do one with multiplicity. So example 2. Let's do f of x. Let's graph f of x equals negative 2x to the 4th plus 2x squared. Okay. So I'm going to follow the same concept. First I'm going to find zeros. So I'm going to factor out a negative 2x squared. And if I factor out negative 2x squared, it should end up as x plus 1, x minus 1. Okay, so this is where I want to talk about multiplicity. Okay, multiplicity tells me that if k is odd, then the graph crosses the x-axis at that point. But when k is even, then it'll just touch that 0. Okay, so k is odd here. This is just 1. It's x to the k. K is odd here. Actually, k is odd here. Okay, that's 1, and there's 1. K is even here, so it's going to touch at 0. Okay, so my zeros are going to be at so my zeros are going to be at 0. It's going to be at 1. And it's going to be at negative 1. Okay? And what I also know is n is even. So when n is even and a sub n is negative, they're both going to go down. Okay, so I'm going to do the n behavior. I know it's going to go down. Okay? And then the only other thing I would have to graph is I probably have to graph in between. So I'd probably graph 0.5 and negative 0.5. So if I graph 0.5, I'm going to just kind of do it in my head right here. So 0.5 is, if I plug in 0.5, this will be negative 0.5 times 1.5 times, so it'll be negative times positive times a negative. So negative times positive and negative, this will be a positive value, so it'll be somewhere up here. It'll be at somewhere here, okay? And then if I graph negative 0.5, negative 0.5 will also give me a negative 0.5 will also give me a positive, so it'll be somewhere here. So I know with a multiplicity of 0, it's going to touch here. It's not going to go through here, it's going to touch here. So it's going to go up to the point, probably touch, and it went through the 2 points. Since k was 1 here, it went through the points, and since k was 2 here, it's just going to touch that point. Okay, and these points weren't exact. I should have been a little bit more exact with that, but normally you would just plug it in. Okay? All right, if you have any questions, write it down on your Google form or on your notes, and then see you tomorrow.